The air crackled with unspoken tension, a silent countdown that only I, Monica, could hear. My mother's casual cruelty, a venomous jest about wishing my daughter Rose wasn't one of her grandchildren, had just landed like a gut punch in the heart of our family gathering. The room still buzzed with forced cheer and the lingering scent of birthday cake. But for me, everything had shifted. A line had been crossed, a boundary shattered, and a quiet, burning resolve ignited within me. They thought it was just another Monica moment, another slight I'd swallow, another wound I'd silently nurse. They were wrong, so terribly, spectacularly wrong. Because in that instant, watching my precious Rose bolt from the room, tears streaming, a profound and irreversible change took root. Their lives, so carefully constructed on my silent sacrifices and unwavering support, were about to come crashing down. They had no idea the storm they had just unleashed. A birthday's bitter truth. Birthdays traditionally are meant to be joyous occasions, days overflowing with celebration, laughter, and affection. In my family, however, they had a peculiar way of unearthing the most painful truths, stripping away polite pretenses to reveal the raw, often ugly realities beneath. This particular day marked my mother's birthday, and as was customary, the entire spectacle of our extended family had descended upon their house. My sister Amanda arrived in a shimmering aura of maternal pride, her husband, Eric, a silent, beaming supporter. Their 3 children, Caleb, a precocious poet, Grace, an effortlessly talented pianist, and Moa, a vocal prodigy who seemed to hum melodies before she could even form words, were, as always, the undisputed stars of the show. They were the golden trio, the paragons of grandchild perfection. And then there was me, Monica, the perpetual disappointment, arriving with my singular, quiet child, Rose. Rose, just 9 years old, sat gingerly on the edge of the plush living room couch, her small legs swinging idly. Her fingers were tightly clasped around a handmade card, a vibrant red crayon heart, charmingly lopsided, adorning its front. She had poured hours of her precious time into crafting that simple card, each stroke a testament to her innocent love. I had looked at it, truly looked at it, and told her it was absolutely perfect, and in my heart, I believed it with every fiber of my being. After the perfunctory slicing of the cake and the strained, awkward attempts at conversation, someone, undoubtedly my mother, ever the orchestrator of these performative family rituals, suggested the children offer a special presentation for Grandma. This was the unfortunate reality of our family dynamic. Children were often treated less like beloved individuals and more like trained seals, expected to perform on cue for applause. Amanda's children naturally went first. Caleb, ever the eager showman, delivered a poem he claimed to have penned himself, though its eloquent phrasing and mature themes sounded suspiciously reminiscent of something one might find in a high school anthology. Grace, with practiced precision, graced us with a piano piece, her fingers dancing across the keys with rehearsed confidence. Then little Moa, her voice sweet and clear, sang a charming, simple tune. Each performance was met with an enthusiastic ovation, the kind usually reserved for child prodigies auditioning for prestigious conservatories. Then the spotlight reluctantly shifted to Rose. My daughter, inherently shy and reserved, had always preferred the quiet companionship of her sketchbook to the clamor of public attention. Yet, on this day, her heart was filled with a brave desire to please her grandmother. She pushed herself up from the couch, her small hands trembling slightly as she began to sing Happy Birthday. It was meant to be simple, heartfelt, but her voice, usually soft and melodious when she sang to herself, wavered. She stumbled over a note, her cheeks flushing a deep scarlet by the second line. Halfway through the song, her throat seemed to constrict and the fragile melody died in a mortified silence. A polite smattering of claps followed, thin and hesitant. Amanda's children exchanged knowing glances, a silent, victorious triumph passing between them. Rose sank back onto the couch, her precious card still clutched tightly in her hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Caleb, seizing the opportunity to reclaim the limelight, piped up, "Can I do another one, Grandma?" Without waiting for an answer, he launched into another poem, this one delivered flawlessly, basking in the renewed, boisterous applause. It was in that moment, as the room filled with warm approval for Amanda's children, that my mother's voice cut through the air. She chuckled, her eyes still beaming at Amanda's prodigies, and said, with a light, dismissive wave of her hand, Sometimes I wish you were our only grandkids." It was uttered so casually, as if it were a harmless, even funny, remark. My father nodded in agreement, his lips pressed into a thin, smug line. Amanda offered an awkward, apologetic smile, but crucially, she didn't object. No one did. The laughter that had filled the room slowly faded, replaced by an agonizing quiet as Rose froze, her gaze fixed first on my mother, then on me. The dam burst. Tears welled, and then spilled over, thick and fast. Her chair scraped violently against the floor as she bolted, a small, trembling figure fleeing down the hall, her sobs echoing in the sudden, suffocating silence. The weight of that silence was unbearable, a thick, palpable presence that threatened to choke me. I rose, my heart hammering against my ribs so violently I feared I might be physically ill. "Monica," my mother's voice was airy, laced with a familiar dismissal. "Oh, for heaven's sake, it was just a joke." A joke? The word caught in my throat, a bitter, indigestible morsel. I didn't trust myself to speak, didn't trust the fury that churned within me. Instead, I simply walked, following the sound of Rose's broken sobs. I found her huddled on the floor in the quiet refuge of the hallway, clutching her crayon card to her chest, as if it were the only shield against the world. Her cheeks were wet and blotchy, her small body trembling uncontrollably. I crouched down, pulling her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. "Come on," I whispered, my own throat constricted with emotion. "We're leaving." There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, no theatrical scene. Just me, my daughter, and the silent, resolute act of walking out the door. We passed the dining room, where Amanda's children sat stiffly, their faces unreadable. My father stared intently at the tabletop, while my mother's smile had curdled into something brittle and fragile. The cake sat untouched, a testament to the abrupt end of the festivities. No one attempted to stop us. Outside, the cool air was a welcome balm against my heated skin. Rose's small hand gripped mine like a lifeline, a fragile anchor in a world that had suddenly become cruel. In the car, she curled against me, her breath hitching, her tears soaking into my sleeve. What words could possibly mend such a profound wound? They didn't mean it would be a lie. "It's not true" would feel hollow to a 9-year-old whose world had just been shattered. To her, it felt true. To me, it was simply the confirmation of a bitter truth I had carried my entire life. So I whispered the only thing that felt real, the only absolute truth I could offer. "You are everything to me. Do you hear me? Everything." She nodded against my shoulder, but the conviction in her eyes wasn't quite there. I started the car, my mother's careless, cruel words echoing in my mind. "Sometimes I wish you were our only grandkids." They had dismissed it as a joke. They believed it would simply blow over, another forgotten moment in the grand tapestry of family drama. They had no idea, because for my daughter it wasn't a joke, it was a devastating wound, and for me it was the final, irrevocable straw. Their ignorance was about to become their undoing. The weight of an unwanted life. People often speak of children as unadulterated blessings, gifts from above. My parents, it seemed, never quite received that particular memo. I was born when they were barely 18, still children themselves, ill-equipped and unprepared for the responsibilities of parenthood. I wasn't planned. I certainly wasn't wanted. And though those harsh words never explicitly left their lips, their sentiment permeated every aspect of my childhood, a constant, chilling undercurrent. I felt it in every fleeting glance, every weary sigh, every barbed joke masquerading as humor. "You owe us, Monica," my dad would chuckle, a brittle sound devoid of warmth. "We could have been in college if it weren't for you." My mother would add with a smirk, "You cost us everything." Always framed as a jest, always followed by a hollow laugh. But even at 6 years old, I knew those weren't jokes. They were accusations, burdens laid bare. A few years later, Amanda arrived. She was the antithesis of everything I was, the golden child, the chosen one. They were older now, more settled, married, and ready for a child they genuinely desired. She was showered with celebratory balloons, meticulously curated photo albums documenting every milestone, and endless applause. I, on the other hand, received hand-me-downs from distant cousins and a relentless barrage of guilt trips. Such was the narrative of my early life. Amanda sparkled with effortless adoration. I merely survived, scraping by on the fringes of their affection. And so a fierce promise took root within me. If I couldn't be wanted, I would, by God, be undeniable. Our family, deeply entrenched in the working class, had never prioritized academic pursuits. Education was a luxury, not a necessity, but I immersed myself in books with a singular, desperate focus, as if my very survival depended on it. Because in a profound sense, it did. Every passed test, every flawless grade, every scholarship application was a rung on a ladder, a desperate ascent out of the suffocating pit of their disdain. When I finally secured a full ride to law school, a glimmer of hope sparked within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, I had finally achieved something worthy of their pride. They wouldn't have to pay a single dime. Their reaction, however, was not pride, but rather a profound, almost audible relief. "One less burden," I overheard my mother remark, her voice light with satisfaction. "Imagine your child earning a full scholarship to law school, and your primary emotion is not joy, but the simple relief of not being financially responsible." The sting of that moment stayed with me. Still, I clung to a fragile hope. Once I became a lawyer, once I achieved undeniable success, surely they would see me differently. After all, my parents owned a small delivery company, a modest operation with just a couple of vans, but one that generated enough headaches to last several lifetimes. Licenses, permits, inspections, a never-ending labyrinth of bureaucracy they constantly struggled to navigate. I grew up listening to their endless grumbling, "If only we had a lawyer in the family, we'd be safe." And so I resolved to be that lawyer, the one who would finally save them all, the one who would prove my worth. For a time, it seemed to work. I graduated, secured a respectable position at a reputable firm, and began earning a substantial income. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just scraping by. I even started sending them money, a consistent $300 every month, a quiet contribution towards their mortgage. It was a bizarre inversion of roles. For the first time, a child of theirs was supporting them. And when it came to their delivery business, I meticulously cleaned house. I filed their mountains of paperwork, deftly argued with overzealous inspectors, and meticulously drafted responses to frivolous competitor complaints. All of it, of course, was pro bono, my unspoken attempt to buy the affection I craved. Before my intervention, lawsuits had been a constant, draining presence. After me, the chaotic legal battles vanished, and their humble company even began to flourish. For a fleeting moment, I dared to believe I had finally done it. I had earned their respect. A choice and its consequences. Then came the opportunity that could have reshaped my entire professional life. A significant promotion. I was in my early 30s, single, and on a clear trajectory for a position that promised to double my already comfortable salary. My parents, typically reserved in their praise for me, were ecstatic, practically giddy with anticipation, already calculating how much more I would be able to contribute to their lives. And then life, in its unpredictable way, intervened. I became pregnant. It wasn't planned, wasn't expected, the result of a casual relationship that was never meant to be permanent. Rose's father still sees her occasionally, but he's never truly been an active presence in her life. My parents' advice was swift and brutal. Get rid of her. Don't ruin your life. But the second I saw that positive test, something profound shifted within me. For the very first time in my existence, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt a surge of purpose, a deep, undeniable connection to the tiny life growing inside me. So I kept her. And Rose, my beautiful, shy, artistic Rose, has been the single greatest decision I have ever made. My parents, however, were absolutely furious. "You've ruined everything again," my mother had accused, her words echoing the familiar refrain of my childhood. I gave up the promotion, trading it for a lower-paying role with flexible hours, sacrificing prestige for the precious balance that allowed me to be there for my daughter. And I was happy, truly, deeply happy. But my parents never forgave me for choosing love, for choosing motherhood, over the financial stability and societal approval they so desperately craved from me. Now Rose is 9, a sweet and gentle soul, always sketching diligently in her notebook, finding more confidence with a pencil in her hand than with a microphone. She is my entire world, the beating heart of my existence. And despite their persistent resentment, their constant cutting digs, I continued to help my parents. The unwavering $300 monthly for their mortgage, the tireless pro bono legal work that kept their precarious business from crumbling around them. I told myself it was simply what a good daughter did. I clung to the fading hope that one day they would finally see me, truly see me. Then, just a few weeks ago, a new opportunity arose, a prestigious law firm offering a high salary and, crucially, flexible hours. It was the very kind of position I had once turned down when I was pregnant with Rose, a ghost of a past choice returned. It felt like destiny, a rare second chance. And this time, I knew I could take it. Rose was older now. I could manage the delicate balance. I planned to surprise my parents with the news on my mother's birthday, to tell them, "You don't have to worry anymore. I'll carry it all. You can finally retire." But before I could even open my mouth, before I could offer them this final monumental gift, my mother looked at my daughter, at Rose, and uttered those damning words. She wished Amanda's kids were her only grandchildren. In that singular, agonizing moment, all the years of sacrifice, all the veiled jokes, all the unpaid debts I had unknowingly inherited and diligently paid, crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. The crushing realization hit me. I wasn't their cherished safety net. I was their convenient scapegoat. And Rose, my innocent, heartbroken Rose, was nothing more than collateral damage in their twisted game of favoritism. So, as I walked out of that house, Rose's small hand gripped tightly in mine, I knew something they didn't. They believed it was just another joke. They expected me to get over it, just as I always had, just as I was always expected to. But I was done. Absolutely, irrevocably done. And very soon, their meticulously constructed lives would begin to unravel. On the silent drive home, Rose stared out the window, her small face pressed against the glass, utterly mute. I desperately wanted to fill the heavy silence, to find words that could somehow erase the cruelty she had just endured. But some wounds are too deep for words, some cruelties too profound to be unheard. Later that night, tucked into her bed, her sketchbook balanced on her knees, she finally looked at me, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "Why would Grandma say that?" she whispered, the question tearing at my heart. Did she mean it? There it was, the heartbreaking question no child should ever have to ask. I sat beside her, taking her small hand in mine. "What she said was wrong, Rose," I stated, my voice firm despite the tremor in my own heart. "It was cruel. And no, it doesn't matter if she thought it was a joke, because it wasn't funny. It was hurtful." Her chin trembled, but she looked at me, her eyes searching for truth. "She was wrong," I repeated, making sure every word carried the weight of conviction. "What matters is you. You are amazing, and I will never, ever let anyone make you feel like you are less than that." It wasn't a grand speech, not flowery or poetic, but it was the honest, unvarnished truth, and she needed to hear it. That night, once Rose was finally asleep, her soft breathing a comforting rhythm in the quiet room, I opened my laptop. My banking app glowed on the screen. My thumb hovered just for a moment over a single button. Then, with a decisive click, I pressed it. Cancel recurring transfer. $300 per month. A confirmation prompt appeared. Confirm. It was almost laughably easy. One click to sever years of obligation, to erase the futile attempts to purchase an affection that was never truly for sale. Then I drafted one last succinct message. "Don't ask me for legal help anymore. Hire your own lawyer." I stared at the words, the ultimate declaration of my liberation, before hitting send and closing the laptop. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an insistent vibration. A text from my mother. "Monica, we'll talk when you've calmed down." Followed by my father. "Don't do anything rash. You'll regret it." I muted the thread, silencing their predictable dismissiveness. By that evening, the tone had shifted, a subtle tremor of urgency starting to creep in. My mother again. "The license renewal's due? Can you just file it? Takes you 5 minutes." Then Amanda, ever the diplomat. "Hey, can you do Dad a quick favor? It's important." I placed the phone face down, allowing the silence to stretch, punctuated only by the ignored pings of incoming messages. Days passed. The desperation began to set in, slowly at first, then gaining momentum. My father's text, "If we miss this deadline, we'll get fined. Please, Monica." My mother, her patience wearing thin, "Answer your phone. Stop being childish. Just do the paperwork." Childish. The irony was so profound it almost made me laugh, a dry, bitter sound. I let them stew. I let the calls pile up, voicemail after voicemail stacking one on top of another, each message a little tighter, a little more frantic than the last. Finally, after 4 agonizing days of radio silence, I responded, not with a call, but with a single, unyielding text. Hire a lawyer. I'm done. An hour later, my phone began to ring again, relentlessly. I let it go to voicemail, then, again and again. On the 10th call, I finally picked up. What is wrong with you? My mother snapped, her voice tight with indignant fury. You can't just cut us off. I already did, I replied, my voice calm, steady, and utterly devoid of emotion. My father's heavy, indignant voice barged in. We raised you. We gave you everything. I almost laughed again, a dry, bitter sound catching in my throat. And I've been paying it back ever since, I said. But my debt is over. You're ungrateful, my mother hissed. No, I corrected her, my voice clear and strong. I'm free. And then I hung up, taller than mountains. That night, Rose sat quietly at the kitchen table, sketching with a seriousness I usually only saw when she was meticulously perfecting her math homework. After a while, she shyly pushed the paper toward me. It was a drawing of a girl holding a paintbrush, standing proudly, taller than a towering mountain. Is that you? I asked, a lump forming in my throat. She nodded. I wish I could go to that art school, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. The one Grace's friend goes to, but it costs too much, right? I looked at her drawing again, at the girl who was indeed taller than mountains, a symbol of strength and potential. Not anymore, I said, a smile, the first genuine, unburdened smile I'd felt in weeks, spreading across my face. She blinked at me, her brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? I leaned in, my voice filled with a quiet certainty. I figured out a way. You're going to that school. Her face, which had been shadowed with unspoken sadness since my mother's cruel words, lit up with an incandescent joy. Rose smiled wide, unguarded, pure delight spilling across her features. It was the radiant look of a child who believed, again, whose dreams once dismissed as unattainable had suddenly been brought within reach. If you had asked my parents why I suddenly ceased helping them, they would have offered you a remarkably simple and self-serving answer. She got snobby. That was the word they used, a venomous little dart shot through the grapevine. I heard it secondhand through my aunt, who called one morning, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet, false concern. Sweetheart, your mother says you've changed since that big job offer, that you think you're too good for us now. Too good. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh out loud. This accusation, from the very same people who once told me that keeping Rose was the gravest mistake of my life. They left out the part, I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion, where they told Rose they wished Amanda's kids were their only grandchildren. There was a long, stunned pause on the other end of the line. Then my aunt whispered, They said that? Yes, I confirmed. And just like that, the gossip chain, a powerful force in our family, began to shift. While my parents were busy crafting their narrative of the snobby, ungrateful lawyer daughter who abandoned them for money and prestige, I was quietly, methodically planting the seeds of truth. And the truth, it turned out, possessed far sharper teeth than any manufactured rumor. The calls started trickling in, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, one of Amanda's in-laws, even my father's brother, who rarely remembered my birthday most years. Why'd you cut them off? They all asked, their voices hushed as if we were discussing a heinous crime. So I told them. Not angrily, not dramatically, just the plain, unvarnished truth. At my mother's birthday party, they told Rose they wished Amanda's kids were their only grandkids. Silence, then a ripple of genuine outrage. Poor Rose, one cousin gasped, her voice filled with sympathy. She's only 9. Unbelievable, muttered another. And just like that, my parents' carefully constructed story of the snobby lawyer daughter began to crumble, exposed for the self-serving lie it was. Some relatives still whispered about forgiveness, about letting bygones be bygones. But most, they started looking at my parents differently. A critical gaze that my parents, acutely sensitive to social standing, undoubtedly felt. Then came the call that truly changed everything, the one that exposed the full magnitude of their loss. It was from a friend at work, someone I had confided in weeks before the birthday party. I had told her about the new job offer, about how I planned to surprise my parents, to finally tell them they could retire, free from financial worry. Her voice sounded hesitant when I answered. Monica, I think I might have messed up. My stomach tightened instantly. What happened? I ran into your mom and dad at the store, she explained quickly, a note of genuine distress in her voice. I thought they already knew, so I asked how they felt about the surprise. They looked at me like I'd grown another head. I said, the promotion, how you were going to tell them they could finally relax about money. Monica, they went pale, like ghosts. I closed my eyes, the image searing itself into my mind. My mother clutching her shopping cart, my father's jaw going slack, both of them realizing in one devastating instant what they had so carelessly, so cruelly, thrown away. They didn't know, I said, the words barely a whisper. No, my friend said softly, and the way they looked, I think they realized what they lost, and that I knew was when the desperation truly kicked into overdrive. The taste of fake forgiveness. The texts that once held an air of demand now turned syrupy sweet, dripping with manufactured remorse. We miss you. Let's talk. It was just a joke. We didn't mean it. Family makes mistakes. We can fix this. Their pleas grew increasingly cloying, increasingly transparent. Then, one Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing on my porch, clutching the most ridiculously oversized cake I had ever seen. It was massive, covered in garish pastel frosting, with the words, "To our favorite granddaughter, Rose," piped clumsily across the top in shaky pink icing. If insincerity were an Olympic sport, they would have been taking home gold. My mother's smile was stretched so tight it looked painful, a desperate mask of forced cheer. "We made this for Rose," she announced brightly, her voice brittle, "to show her how much we love her." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so profoundly off-key it hurt. Normal grandparents, truly loving grandparents, would insist they loved all their grandchildren equally. But mine, in their clumsy attempt at damage control, had decided to crown an overnight favorite, as if that singular act could erase the fact that they had wished Rose didn't exist in the first place. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, my expression impassive. "Rose isn't home," I stated plainly. Their faces flickered, a momentary tremor of disappointment. But my father, ever the salesman, quickly rallied. "Then let her see it later. We just want to make things right. After telling my innocent daughter she wasn't wanted, they genuinely believed a gaudy cake with bad icing and fake smiles could somehow erase the wound. "You didn't come here for Rose," I said evenly, my voice cutting through their thinly veiled charade. "You came here for my money. That cake won't buy your way back." My mother's brittle smile faltered, finally cracking. My father tightened his grip on the cake box as if it were a life raft, his knuckles white. "Please," my mother whispered, the desperation finally truly cracking through her facade. "Just let us in." "No," I said, my voice unwavering. "Take your cake and leave." And that's exactly what they did. Two humiliated figures walking slowly down my driveway, clutching their sugary bribe, their shoulders slumped in defeat. The cascade of consequences in a blooming life. The collapse of their business came next, slowly at first, a creeping rot, then all at once, a catastrophic implosion. First, they missed a license renewal, a minor oversight resulting in a small, annoying fine, easily survivable. Then came a compliance audit, uncovering a tangled mess of missing forms, incorrect filings, and regulatory breaches. The very kind of intricate paperwork I used to handle in my sleep, effortlessly keeping their affairs in order. The fines doubled, then quadrupled. A month later, a disgruntled competitor filed a formal complaint. My parents, in their stubborn arrogance, attempted to handle the hearing themselves. I heard later from a relative who had sat in, witnessing the train wreck firsthand. They stumbled over basic legal jargon, contradicted themselves repeatedly, and practically handed the case over to the opposing side on a silver platter. The resulting penalties wiped out their entire savings. By the end of the year, their once thriving delivery company, the business they had always relied on, was completely finished. Amanda, who had been quietly counting on inheriting the business one day, was left with nothing but a mountain of debt and a deep, simmering resentment. And without my consistent $300 a month, without their meticulously crafted safety net, my parents quickly fell behind on their mortgage payments. Within a matter of months, the house they had once bragged about, the house filled with so many bitter memories, was gone. Meanwhile, in stark, beautiful contrast, my life bloomed. Rose thrived at her new fine arts school. One afternoon, she came running out, a drawing clutched triumphantly in her hands, breathless with excitement. "Mom, they put mine on the board. The teacher said it's one of the best in the class." For once, my child's beautiful, heartfelt work wasn't brushed aside or dismissed. For once, she was celebrated, her talent acknowledged and applauded. At work, I was thriving too. The new firm offered me challenging cases that ignited my passion, and I was surrounded by colleagues who genuinely respected my abilities. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was flourishing, finally inhabiting a space where I truly belonged. And then there was Daniel, a kind, widowed father I met at Rose's school. His daughter, Lily, shared Rose's love for drawing, and soon casual playdates blossomed into easy, natural conversations. Conversations led to shared dinners, and for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I had long since lost: possibility. I sometimes thought about that ridiculously ornate cake, about the raw, exposed look on my parents' faces when they realized I wasn't letting them in. I thought about my friend's voice on the phone, describing how utterly pale they had gone, the dawning comprehension of what they had truly thrown away. And the truth is, a part of it still hurt, because I really had been ready to give them everything. I had been ready to care for them, to be their unwavering support for the rest of their lives. But instead, they chose a joke that was no joke at all. They gambled with my loyalty, with my daughter's heart, and they lost everything. While their lives slowly unraveled into chaos, mine was finally, beautifully falling into place. They had bet everything on me always being their safety net. And when they lost me, they truly lost everything. A new chapter. Fast forward a year, and Rose is almost unrecognizable from the shy, vulnerable girl who once stumbled through a birthday song. At her fine art school, her vibrant drawings proudly hang in the hall, a testament to her blossoming talent. She talks about colors and brushstrokes with a quiet confidence I once only dreamed she would possess. Watching her walk into that building every morning, head held high, a spark of pure joy in her eyes is worth more than every single cent I ever wasted trying to buy my parents' affection. My own life, too, is transformed. The new firm isn't just a workplace anymore, it feels like home. The promotion wasn't merely a title, it brought stability, genuine respect, and the profound freedom to choose my own future, to sculpt a life that truly reflects who I am. And Daniel? He's no longer just the widowed dad I met at school drop-off. He and his wonderful daughter Lily moved in with us a few months ago. When I was a kid, I always imagined having 2 children of my own one day. Then life, as it often does, intervened, and by the time Rose was born, I was single and nearing 40. I told myself that old dream was over, that Rose would be my only child, and I was grateful for her, immensely so. But, still, in quiet moments, I sometimes grieved for the complete family I thought I'd never have. Now, somehow, that old dream has come true, in a way I never expected but is more perfect than I could have ever imagined. Rose and Lily are like true sisters, their rooms side by side, their walls adorned with a symphony of shared drawings, whispering secrets to each other long into the night until they finally drift off to sleep. And Daniel and I, we get to raise them together, a united, loving team. As for my parents, word travels quickly in our community. They now rent a small, nondescript apartment, a stark contrast to the house they once so proudly bragged about. The delivery business is gone, a distant memory of their former enterprise. Amanda's bitterness is now legendary among the relatives, a testament to her dashed expectations and inherited debts. And the relatives who once rushed to my parents' defense now maintain a respectful distance, their conversations polite but brief. Everyone knows the true story now. The grandparents who told an innocent child she wasn't truly wanted. That, ultimately, is the legacy they built for themselves. So what do you think? Did I go too far in seeking my own freedom and justice, or did I simply go not far enough to mend a lifetime of wounds?